Welcome back to episode 3, a discussion on the new Caribbean folktales and legend for the 21st century by Roselle Thompson, a book which is due to come out in 4 weeks' time in October 2018. It's a very innovative piece of work that shows something that has never been done before. And so we have 6 Caribbean tales that have been resurrected and remodeled so that they have more relevance for the 21st century. For example, let's take Anansi. Some of you know Brer Anansi, or just Anansi, with various spellings. It's an original, Anansi himself is an original Akan god from West Africa. And in West Africa, he will chastise you for doing something wrong. When the Anansi story arrived in the Caribbean, Anansi became a cunning spider whose job is to outwit others in order to survive. Situations needed a different approach. And so as a kind of exemplar or example for slaves against their fearful colonial masters, Anansi took on a new form. So in their 21st century context, the new Caribbean folktales and legends are framed around the original structure of the old tales, but are given modern day scenarios that are designed to highlight the significance and the existence of folk wisdom within them. For example, the old Anansi story has been genderized in the new Caribbean folktales and legends for the 21st century. Anansi's been given a female persona. And whilst new in their current scenarios, the tales can also be seen as a means of transmitting folk wisdom in a modern context, at the same time ensuring a continuum of survival of Caribbean folktales generally in ways that could make Caribbean folklore more palpable in modern times. And then there is the Gang Sarah. Many of you may not have heard of this absolute legend of a character in the tales, predominantly from Tobago in Trinidad. Such characters has been created as a person within the Caribbean folktales and legends for the 21st century. It's been recreated as a person who has embraced the vibrant tone and tempo of both landscapes, Africa and the Caribbean, in her past. Given the very minute details we have of Gang Sarah's African past, and the fragmented information about her existence in the Caribbean, in the new Caribbean folktales and legends for the 21st century, Gang Sarah has been invested with a more detailed, thought-provoking past, which attempts to piece together the fragmentary nature of her life in ways that helps to stabilize the topos of existence in Caribbean orature. And by orature, I'm talking specifically here about a fusion of the oral and literary traditions of the Caribbean. Moreover, the folk characteristics of another tale, Papa Bois, may be scoffed at in the 21st century as just plantation tale, but the new tale is designed to show how the tale's origin has linkages and relevance in the present, as it draws attention to the intergenerational strife between the older generation's ways of thinking, whose memory and discourse is still linked to their past. This, of course, is squared against a point of convergence among the emerging younger generations, which seem to suggest that they are more ready to dismiss the tales as being irrelevant to their present existence for many reasons. These range from questions about identity, the notion of a sense of place, culture, and its representation, as well as the relevance to their present lifestyles. And so Gang Sarah is thought-provoking in itself, Papa Bois more thought-provoking perhaps. And then there is another tale, The Great House. Many of you know and have seen A Great House in the Caribbean. The narrator of this tale, the child who miraculously survives the attempt to end her life at birth, has surprisingly inherited a great house as the long lost heir to the family's Caribbean fortune, and is shocked at the existence of this heirloom. She's confused as to how this has come about and needs to find out information before she fully accepts the unexpected gift. As the great house's incoming occupant, she was intrigued to learn what lies beneath the innocent-looking exterior, the monument which most people were reluctant to talk about because the confusion and the melee that produced her was information which no one wanted to talk about. This is told the real story of how she was swapped at birth with a 15-year-old domestic servant's child, the domestic servant having given birth to a stillborn child and was brought up by the domestic servant as her own child, because the plantation baron, an Englishman, whose wife, his English wife, had given birth to not his child. He had given instructions to kill the wife's illegitimate child, and this instruction had to be obeyed. The tale, as told by the folks, draw attention to a little-known phenomenon in the Caribbean about the iconic great houses which still exist in the region. These houses were owned and built by plantation owners during the 15th and 16th centuries, and in the height of the slave trade and plantation expansion in the region. They were the exclusive domains of the plantation sugar barons, who built these luxurious mansions to ensure their optimum comfortable lifestyles and protection on the plantations, whilst they conducted their trade of sugar, cocoa, and later bananas in the region. However, in practice, there were sordid affairs, love triangles, abuse of powers between masters and servants, extramarital affairs with slaves and domestic servants, which led to complex identity for offspring and of such liaisons. How does that bear any relevance to 21st century perspective? You'll have to read more in the 21st century folk tales, the Caribbean legends and folk tales for the 21st century. And who've heard of Mama La Diablesse? Or in Grenada we say La Diablesse. Well, this folk tale has a French influence, obvious by its name, and is based on the existence of a devil woman who roams around at night. She takes the form of a beautiful woman with eyes like burning coals and a face which resembles a corpse. However, she hides it under a beautiful white brim hat and veil over her face, turns up at village dances where she is immediately disliked by the women present, but she charms the men and then asks one of them to take her home. He follows her whilst under her spell into the woods, and then suddenly she disappears. Heard of that? Of course. Unable to find his way home, the man stumbles around the dark wood until he either falls into a ravine or river to his death, or gets attacked by wild hogs. The tale, the 21st century perspective, focuses on Benji, a would-be intellectual Caribbean man who doesn't believe in folk tales. He believed in what he read in books, and Benji, being an intrepid soldier of the land, a tireless worker, a cultivator, untouched by superstition, unmoved by legends and the stories told by the folks. As an aspiring intellectual, this would-be academic explained everything in intellectual or scientific terms. He tried to disprove the influence of the folk tales in his life when he and his mule encountered a strange occurrence while traveling late one night. He was knowledgeable about the landscape and knew a good deal about the plants and insects and how they paralleled human behavior or vice versa. How does Mama La Diablesse become relevant to the 21st century? You will have to read the new Caribbean tales, folk tales and legend for the 21st century. And what about Mrs. Anansi? Who's ever heard of Mrs. Anansi, the Black Widow spider? The story is told by someone who's witnessed children in a London school playground singing and a clapping rhyme about Anansi and his wife in London. The storyteller questions the origin of the rhyme and Anansi's wicked wife. More specifically, the rhyme is linked with the story of a young girl named Erling in a Jamaican village who is willful and cunning in her behavior, destructive, and enjoys orchestrating the downfall of others. She is immediately branded Mrs. Anansi and teased about it. Picky head girl. Like the Black Widow spy that she'd become known as, she displayed the worst kind of characteristics and vowed that one day she would leave Jamaica. She had the opportunity to travel at the age of 26 years as a holiday visitor to England, but it was not before she revealed to the one person whom she had as family, who had brought her up against all the odds, that she was not coming back to Jamaica. The grandmother, the person in question, gives her a stark warning about burning the bridge before she crossed. You heard that proverb? Never call an alligator big mouth until you cross the river. That's the Black Widow spider's warning. How does that make this female Anansi fare in her mission to stay in England at all costs? Find out more in the new folk tales and legend for the 21st century by Roselle Thompson. Coming soon, 4 weeks' time, in October 2018. A book to be published by Eagle Publishers or Eagle Publication. More on that in the next episode. But stay tuned for the new folk tales and legends for the 21st century by Roselle Thompson. See you in the next episode. Thank you.